He knelt to propose under a glittering skyline, clutching a dazzling diamond and gazing at the woman he adored. Then his phone buzzed with a cryptic message. Moments later, he found his best friend entwined with her. In that moment, his world shattered. What would he do next? Ethan Blake built his empire from nothing. He possessed wealth and power, yet his heart ached for genuine love. Isabella, with her quiet strength and tender support, filled the emptiness in his soul. She was not merely his partner. She was his refuge. All the while, his lifelong friend Damien shared secretive glances and gentle smiles with Isabella, sparking silent doubts. A fleeting look, a moment of hesitation. Subtle warnings that Ethan chose to dismiss. He had planned a night of perfection on a lavish yacht, determined to propose and promise a future of forever. As he prepared to speak the words that would seal his destiny, an undercurrent of uncertainty stirred. Whispers of betrayal lingered in every exchanged glance and half-hidden smile. His heart brimmed with hope and vulnerability, unaware of the dangerous secret that lay hidden. Love, as it often does, conceals its true nature until the moment of reckoning. Soon, Ethan would learn that even the strongest bonds can hide the most painful truths. Stay with us to discover what unfolds next. Ethan stood on the deck of the yacht under a shimmering city skyline. The city lights danced on the water as guests spoke in soft, cheerful tones, unaware that this night would soon end in heartbreak. For the first time in many years, Ethan felt uncertainty stir within him. He held a small, gleaming box that concealed a ring meant to promise a forever bond. Yet he knew that forever was delicate and uncertain. His thoughts raced as he prepared to declare his love. The gentle hum of conversation merged with the rapid beat of his heart, forming a quiet cadence of anticipation and hidden fear. Memories of shared laughter and tender moments with Isabella surfaced, each one a reminder of the safety and warmth she had once given him. But tonight, a shadow of doubt had crept into his soul. Just as he lifted the ring, his phone emitted a sudden, piercing buzz that cut through the murmurs. A moment of silence fell over his thoughts as he read the message, "Proceed to the VIP lounge." A chill ran down his spine as he considered the possibility of deception. With careful steps, he moved away from the gathering, his mind filled with a growing sense of dread. In that fleeting second, the perfect moment he had envisioned transformed into a prelude to pain. The promise of eternal love wavered like a fragile flame in the dark. His heart whispered a painful question: was the love he had built merely an illusion? In that moment, the delicate bond of trust began to unravel, leaving him to confront the bitter truth that perfection may never truly exist. The night trembled with unspoken promises and looming secrets, and Ethan wondered if his shattered dreams could ever mend into something real tonight. Unexpectedly, Ethan took a deep breath, his fingers tightening around the velvet box in his pocket. The yacht swayed gently beneath him, its deck illuminated by the city's golden skyline. Laughter and music filled the air, but none of it reached him. Tonight was the night he had waited for, months of planning, rehearsing the perfect words, imagining her reaction. He turned to Isabella, who stood before him in a shimmering gown, the soft glow of lights reflecting in her eyes. A slow smile curled his lips as he dropped to one knee, the crowd gasping in delight. A hush fell over the gathering, all eyes fixed on them. Isabella, his voice was steady, but his heart pounded. From the moment I met you, I knew my life would never be the same. You have stood by me through every storm, every victory. I cannot imagine my future without you. Will you marry me? The box snapped open, revealing the glinting diamond ring inside. A perfect proposal. A perfect moment. But perfection was an illusion. For a heartbeat, Isabella said nothing. Her eyes widened, but the sparkle of joy he expected was missing. The pause stretched too long. A flicker of something unreadable crossed her face. Doubt? Hesitation? Then, as if remembering the eyes watching, she exhaled and smiled. Yes. Applause erupted. Champagne glasses clinked. Strangers cheered. Ethan let out a breath of relief, slipping the ring onto her trembling finger. But a voice whispered in the back of his mind, why had she hesitated? Why did her smile not quite reach her eyes? He pushed the thought away. Tonight was about love. About forever. But sometimes forever is the greatest lie of all. The weight of the moment should have lifted, but something felt wrong. Ethan stood among the well-wishers, his fingers still tingling from slipping the ring onto Isabella's hand. Smiling faces surrounded them, voices filled with excitement, yet his mind fixated on a fleeting detail, one that refused to fade. Isabella was radiant yet distracted. While guests reached out, congratulating her, her eyes flickered past them. The warmth in her smile did not quite reach her gaze. Ethan shook his head, trying to dismiss the uneasy feeling crawling up his spine. Maybe it was nothing. Maybe it was just the rush of emotions, the weight of the night. But then he saw it. A brush of fingers, so brief it could have been accidental. Damien's hand had skimmed Isabella's arm, the touch so casual, so fleeting, yet it lingered in Ethan's mind like an echo. Isabella's body tensed ever so slightly, her breath hitching for the briefest moment before she turned, resuming her conversation with a forced laugh. Damien stood only a few steps away, his face unreadable, his glass raised in silent acknowledgement. Ethan's stomach clenched. Was it just in his head? Was he reading too much into a moment that meant nothing? Or was there something more? He forced himself to push the thought away. Tonight was meant to be perfect, but perfection had already begun to crack. Ethan's laughter joined the chorus of celebration around him. Champagne glasses clinked, music pulsed softly, and Isabella, radiant in the glow of the night, was at his side. Yet, beneath the warmth of the moment, something gnawed at him, something he could not name. Then his phone vibrated. A single buzz. A message. Frowning, he pulled it from his pocket. An unknown number. 4 words. Go to the VIP lounge. Now! A chill ran down his spine. His first instinct was to ignore it. This was his night, a night of joy, of love. But the unease settled deeper, gripping his chest. He glanced up. Isabella was laughing, a hand delicately placed on Damien's arm as she whispered something in his ear. Damien smirked, leaning in slightly. Ethan's stomach twisted. The text was vague, but the urgency in those 4 words pulled at him. Was it a prank? A mistake? Or something far worse? His gaze flickered to Isabella. Her fingers tightened around her champagne glass. Damien caught Ethan's glance and lifted his drink in a subtle toast, his expression unreadable. Ethan exhaled sharply, forcing a smile. His heart pounded. Without a word, he stepped away from the crowd, weaving through the guests. His fingers curled around the phone, his mind racing. The hallway leading to the VIP lounge stretched before him, dimly lit, eerily quiet. Every step echoed louder than the last. Something was wrong. The weight of the night, the ring, the promise, the future, felt fragile in his pocket. He reached the door, hesitated, took a breath, and pushed it open. Ethan moved through the crowd, his steps slow, measured, yet heavy with an unease he could not shake. Laughter and music faded behind him, replaced by the sound of his own breathing. The phone in his grip felt heavier than it should have. Go to the VIP lounge. Now! 4 words. 4 words that clawed at his thoughts, refusing to be ignored. He stole a glance over his shoulder. Isabella was still there, her smile dazzling, her laughter soft and melodic. Damien stood close, his head tilted toward her, whispering something that made her eyes flicker, not with joy, but something else. Ethan's stomach tightened. A joke? A private moment? Or something far worse? His fingers curled into a fist. The rational part of his mind screamed at him to turn around, to let it go, to drown this doubt in champagne and celebration. But another part, deeper, darker, pushed him forward. The hallway stretched before him, silent, dimly lit. His polished shoes barely made a sound against the floor, but his heartbeat pounded in his ears. Was this paranoia? Or was he about to uncover something he was never meant to see? He reached the door. A breath in. A second of hesitation. Then, with a steady hand, he pushed it open. Ethan pushed the door open. The air inside was heavy, thick with a silence that did not belong in a room filled with celebration. His eyes landed on them immediately, Isabella and Damien. Too close. Their voices hushed, words exchanged in a space meant for secrecy. His mind refused to register what he was seeing. The way Damien's fingers brushed against Isabella's cheek. The way her head tilted into his touch, as if drawn by a force stronger than reason. "Tell him, Isabella," Damien whispered. Ethan's stomach twisted. The words echoed in his mind, a demand laced with something dangerous. Isabella hesitated. A single moment stretched into eternity. Then she leaned in. Their lips met. A sharp breath left Ethan's body, but no sound came. The world blurred. His heartbeat pounded in his ears, drowning out everything else. His fiancée. His best friend. Together. His hands curled into fists, nails biting into his palms. A wave of nausea crawled up his throat. Was this a dream? A nightmare? Or had he been blind this entire time? Isabella pulled away first, her gaze flickering toward the door. Her lips parted, but no words came out. Damien turned. His expression did not hold shock. Not even guilt. Just quiet victory. And in that moment, Ethan knew this was not a mistake. This was betrayal. Ethan stood frozen. His breath was trapped in his chest, his body paralyzed as his mind scrambled for a rational explanation. But there was none. A moment ago, Isabella had promised him forever. Now she was standing in the arms of his best friend. His heart pounded, every beat hammering the truth deeper into his soul. He wanted to believe this was a misunderstanding, that there was something, anything, that would make sense of what he had just seen. But Damien's hand lingered on Isabella's waist. His fingers brushed her cheek with an intimacy Ethan had never questioned before. Isabella turned, locking eyes with Ethan. A flicker of something, shock, guilt, regret, flashed across her face. But it was gone too quickly, replaced with silence. Ethan's voice was barely a whisper. Why? No anger. No accusation. Just a raw, broken word. Isabella opened her mouth, but nothing came out. Damien took a step forward. His expression was calm, as if this was inevitable. "You already know the answer," he said. Ethan's hands clenched. No, he did not. His best friend, his fiancée. Had this been going on for days? Weeks? Longer? Had every "I love you" been a lie? Isabella's lips trembled. Ethan, he shook his head. There was nothing left to say. The weight of it crushed him, because the moment she hesitated, he knew it had never been real. Ethan did not move. He did not speak. He simply watched. The room felt detached, like he was seeing everything from a distance, like it was happening to someone else. Isabella pulled away from Damien, her lips parting as if she had felt Ethan's presence before she saw him. And then she did. Her face drained of color. Damien's gaze followed hers. His eyes widened. His grip on Isabella tightened, as if bracing for the impact that never came. Because Ethan did not react. He did not storm in. He did not shout. He just stood there, silent, unmoving. Somewhere deep inside him, a part of him already knew. Every hesitation, every stolen glance, every moment that had not quite felt right. The truth had been whispering to him for so long, but he had not wanted to hear it. Isabella took a step forward. "Ethan, He turned away before she could finish. There was nothing she could say that would matter now. Damien exhaled sharply, his voice laced with panic. "Ethan, listen." Ethan did not. The betrayal was not fire. It was not rage. It was silence. Cold. Final. And without another word, he walked away. Ethan walked, but he was not sure where he was going. The laughter and celebration swirled around him, voices blending into a blur. Music played. Glasses clinked. People toasted to love, to forever. Forever. The word no longer meant anything. A waiter appeared in front of him, holding out a tray with a bright smile. "Champagne, sir?" Ethan reached out, his fingers barely grazing the delicate stem of the glass. Then, without thought, he let go. The crystal shattered against the marble floor. Silence rippled outward. Heads turned. Gasps followed. But inside him? Nothing. The waiter stammered, bending quickly to clean the mess. "I am so sorry, sir." "Let me." Ethan did not respond. His legs kept moving, his mind blank. Some heartbreaks were loud. Others? Silent. But silence could cut deeper than any scream. Ethan stared at the engagement ring resting in his palm. A symbol of forever. A promise he thought was real. Now it was nothing more than a reminder of his greatest mistake. His fingers curled around the metal. It felt cold, lifeless, like the love he thought he had. Minutes ago, this ring meant everything. Now, it meant nothing. He exhaled, slow, steady. No anger. No pain. Just emptiness. A table stood beside him, covered in scattered champagne glasses and forgotten napkins. Without a word, he placed the ring on its surface. It did not belong to him anymore. Then he turned and walked away. Ethan did not look back. No words. No accusations. No demands for an explanation. He simply walked. The celebration still roared around him, music, laughter, the clinking of glasses. But it all felt distant, like an echo from another lifetime. A waiter approached, holding out a glass of champagne with a practiced smile. Ethan reached for it, then let it slip through his fingers. The glass shattered against the floor. Crystal shards scattered, reflecting the golden light. People turned. Eyes widened. But Ethan? He kept walking. Each step felt lighter. Everything he had built, everything he had believed in, it had all crumbled in an instant. And yet, something inside him whispered. Maybe losing her was the best thing that ever happened to him. Betrayal does not end in a single moment. It lingers, poisoning everything. But sometimes destruction is the first step to something greater. Ethan sat in silence, the engagement ring resting in his palm. Just minutes ago, it had symbolized forever. Now it was nothing more than a cruel joke. His mind replayed every moment, every whispered word, every lingering glance between Isabella and Damien. How had he not seen it before? Had he been blind, or had he simply refused to look? The way Isabella laughed at Damien's jokes, softer, more real than when she laughed with him. The stolen glances, the hesitation in her touch, the way Damien always stood just a little too close. Had they all known? Were people at the party smiling, pretending, waiting for the moment when the truth would finally come crashing down on him? His fingers tightened around the ring. Betrayal is not a sudden act. It is a slow unraveling, a pattern of lies that only makes sense when it is too late. Was he the last one to know? Or had he always known and simply ignored the warning signs? His hand loosened. The ring fell from his palm, rolling across the table before settling in silence. And in that silence, a realization took hold. This was not the end. It was only the beginning. Ethan's mind was a battlefield, memories replaying with new, painful clarity. The night at the charity gala, Isabella in her emerald dress, Damien's hand lingering too long on her back. Ethan had noticed, but he had brushed it off. Inside jokes between them, laughter that always felt just out of his reach. He had told himself he was overthinking, that they were just friends. But the one moment that haunted him most, the night Isabella had not answered his call. He had tried again and again, until finally someone picked up. "Isabella?" His voice had been filled with concern, but it was not her voice on the other end. It was Damien's. She is in the shower, Damien had said casually, too comfortably. Ethan had frozen, his mind racing, but then he had laughed it off. She must have left her phone behind while visiting a friend. He had believed the lie because it was easier than questioning the truth. Now the weight of it crushed him. Had it all been a lie? The whispered I love yous, the promises, the future they had planned? Had he been nothing more than an obstacle, something to be removed when the time was right? Every moment, every touch, every smile between them was now tainted, rewritten by betrayal. And the worst part? The signs had always been there. He had just refused to see them. Ethan's knuckles throb, blood trickling down his fingers. The wall did not break, but something inside him did. The rage has nowhere to go. It burns, consuming him from the inside. He grips the whiskey glass, staring at the amber liquid before downing it. One drink turns into 4. The fire in his chest does not fade, but at least it numbs. Work becomes his escape. Numbers, reports, deadlines, he drowns in them, forcing his mind to stay anywhere but the past. Hours stretch into days. His colleagues whisper, worried glances exchanged. But no distraction is enough. Because no matter what he does, Isabella's laughter echoes in his mind. Damien's hand on her back, the stolen glances, the lies disguised as love. The betrayal does not just hurt. It changes him. And there is no going back. Ethan grips the ring between his fingers, the cold metal pressing against his skin. It was supposed to be a promise, a future, a love that would last. Now it is nothing but a lie. He stands at the edge of the ocean, the waves roaring beneath him. The wind bites at his skin, but he barely feels it. Every memory replays her laughter, her whispered I love yous, her hand in his. But now all he sees are the cracks beneath the surface. He lifts the ring higher, watching how the light catches it. Once it had meaning. Now it is just a worthless stone. Without hesitation, he throws it. The ring vanishes into the water, swallowed by the tide. Gone. But the ache in his chest remains. Ethan scrolls through the headlines, each one a fresh wound. Billionaire heir's fiancé seen hand in hand with best friend. Isabella and Damien, a love story in the shadows? He does not need to read the articles. The pictures say enough. Damien's hand on her back. Their smiles unguarded. The way she leans into him, effortless, familiar. His grip tightens on the phone. The world knows. And so does he. Ethan sat alone in his office, the cold glow of his computer screen reflecting the turmoil inside him. A message popped up from a trusted business partner. You deserved better, man. We all saw it. Those words cut through him like a knife. His blood ran cold as he reread the message over and over. How could everyone know? Why had no one told him sooner? Every headline in the news, every whispered conversation among colleagues, now confirmed the betrayal that had been hidden behind smiles and empty assurances. Ethan recalled the subtle signals he had once dismissed, the lingering glances, the secretive smiles exchanged between Isabella and Damien, the quiet laughter that masked a deeper deception. It was as if a veil had been lifted, and he was forced to confront a reality he had long ignored. He listened to the echo of those words in his mind. You deserved better. His voice trembled as he repeated them, unable to fathom how close he had come to living a lie. The realization burned through him. It was not just the betrayal of love, but the betrayal of trust from those he had held dear. A part of him wondered if he had been too wrapped up in his empire, too consumed by ambition to notice the warning signs. He had built his world from nothing, earning respect and admiration, yet his heart had remained vulnerable, a vulnerability that Isabella had exploited and Damien had embraced. He remembered the night at the gala when Isabella's laugh was a little too soft when shared with Damien, and the way her eyes flickered in his direction as if hiding secrets. Now every memory stung with the truth. Ethan stood up slowly, determination replacing the cold shock that had gripped him. I did not deserve this, he said softly, the words laced with both sorrow and resolve. He wondered aloud, why did no one warn me? How could I be the last to see what was happening? His voice was barely audible, yet every word carried the weight of a broken promise. In that moment, he resolved to reclaim his life. The betrayal had left him shattered, but it would also be the catalyst for his transformation. I will not be defined by this hurt, he declared, a steely resolve in his tone. The message was a turning point, a bitter truth that, while painful, offered him a path forward. Ethan knew that the road ahead would be lonely and steep, filled with difficult choices and hard lessons. Yet, even as his heart ached, he began to see the seeds of change. As he closed his eyes, the words echoed once more, "You deserved better." And in that echo, he found a promise to himself. A promise to rise from the ashes of betrayal and rebuild not just his empire, but his soul. Ethan stood before a mirror, his reflection a haunting reminder of the man he once was. Bruised knuckles and tired eyes stared back at him, eyes that had once sparkled with ambition and hope. Now they held only sorrow and resolve. He asked himself, "Who am I without Isabella?" His voice was quiet, full of regret. For years he had built an empire with relentless determination, but his heart had been his only weakness. The face in the mirror was a stranger, one molded by betrayal, scarred by deceit. He traced the line of his jaw, feeling the echoes of every harsh word and every silent accusation. "I have spent years chasing success, but what is success without trust? Without love?" he murmured. The mirror did not answer, but it reflected a truth he could no longer ignore. A storm of memories swirled within him, the gentle touch of Isabella, the warm promise of their future, now tainted by Damien's treachery. Each memory was a dagger, each smile a reminder of what he had lost. Yet, as he stared deeper, a new fire began to kindle within him. "I will never allow this pain to define me," he vowed, his voice steady and resolute. The man in the mirror was no longer the one who had been blinded by love. He was the one who would rise above it. He recalled every moment of weakness, every time he had ignored the warning signs. "I have made mistakes," he whispered, "but I will learn from them." With that promise, he felt a shift, a determination to rebuild not just his fortunes but his very being. "I will become stronger. I will become wiser. I will never be the man who allowed betrayal to break him," he declared. His eyes, once filled with despair, now burned with purpose. The reflection that stared back was that of a man ready to embark on a journey of redemption, a journey where every scar was a lesson and every loss a stepping stone. "This pain will be my forge," he said, a final, resolute tone in his voice. For in that moment, Ethan understood that while betrayal may shatter the past, it can also build the foundation for a future he had yet to imagine. And with that realization, he vowed, never again would he let love be his downfall. Ethan stood at the crossroads of his shattered life, his heart a battleground of burning questions. He had reached a point where trust was a memory, a ghost of a promise that had long since faded into the past. Now, only the bitter taste of betrayal remained. The question echoed in his mind, revenge, redemption, or something far worse. His thoughts raced as he contemplated the choices before him. He could move on, rebuild his life piece by broken piece, or he could seek vengeance with a single, devastating call that would ruin Damien's career. But would such destruction ever mend the emptiness inside him? Ethan recalled every whispered conversation, every subtle glance that had gone unnoticed. He had trusted Isabella with his heart and believed Damien to be a loyal friend. Yet, as the truth seeped into every corner of his existence, he began to wonder if the cost of betrayal was not simply measured in lost love but in the loss of his very self. In the quiet of his office, where the only sound was the slow tick of a clock, he sat and wrestled with his inner turmoil. His colleagues spoke in hushed tones about the scandal that had rocked their world. One message sent by a trusted business partner had confirmed what he feared most. "You deserved better, man." We all saw it. Those words had cut him deeply, leaving him questioning his worth and the integrity of those he once held dear. His mind replayed the moments of deception like a broken record. Every secret smile between Isabella and Damien, every hushed word shared in shadowed corners, now rang out with the clarity of betrayal. He had been too caught up in his ambition to notice the signs that warned of the inevitable collapse of his trust. Ethan did not cry out or lash out. Instead, he listened to the silence that followed, a silence that spoke louder than any scream of anger ever could. That silence, heavy with sorrow and regret, made him realize that revenge would not restore what was lost. It would only deepen the chasm within him, leaving him more hollow than before. He knew that if he allowed vengeance to rule his heart, he would become the very thing he despised. Yet, the temptation to dismantle Damien's world with a single phone call lingered like a dark whisper in the back of his mind. Will ruining his life make me whole again? He asked himself in a voice that trembled with both rage and despair. In that moment of painful introspection, Ethan made a choice. He would not be defined by his betrayal. He would not allow the darkness of revenge to claim his soul. Instead, he vowed to find redemption in the ruins of his past. He resolved to rebuild his life on a foundation of truth, to learn from his mistakes and to grow stronger from the pain he had endured. Betrayal breaks a man, but what he does next will define him forever. With that thought echoing in his mind, Ethan rose from his chair. He took a deep breath, steadying himself for the difficult journey ahead. The road to redemption would be long and fraught with challenges, but he was determined to find a new beginning beyond the wreckage of shattered trust. And so, with his heart heavy yet resolute, Ethan stepped forward into a future that promised the chance to reclaim not only his life but also his dignity. Ethan stood in the empty penthouse, where love had once filled every corner and now only silence remained. His empire flourished beyond these walls, yet his soul lay in ruins. He felt tired of anger, tired of betrayal. "I have been living in shadows for too long," he whispered, his voice echoing in the stillness. He wondered, what if the best revenge is no revenge at all? Every hidden smile, every secret glance shared between Isabella and Damien now formed a tapestry of regret. In that cold, solitary space, he accepted that before rising, one must fall. His heart ached with the weight of shattered trust as he silently vowed to let this despair be his teacher. Days later, Ethan began to rise from that rock bottom. He returned to his roots, to the days when his vision was pure and unburdened by deceit. Each morning, he forced himself to train his body. "I will rebuild myself piece by piece," he declared with determination as his muscles burned and sweat marked his progress. The gym transformed into a sanctuary where every drop of effort kindled a new strength within him. At work, he dove into his business with renewed vigor. Contracts, negotiations, and complex deals no longer intimidated him. Every decision, every strategic move was now a step toward reclaiming not just his empire, but his dignity. In boardroom meetings, his voice rang with newfound resolve. "I will not be defined by my past," he stated firmly, leaving no room for doubt. One quiet evening, with the hum of the city far below, Ethan sat alone in his office and reflected. "I have learned from every mistake," he murmured. Memories of Isabella's soft laughter with Damien and the secret smiles they shared haunted him no longer. They had become lessons. "They did not break me," he whispered. "They freed me from the chains of naivety." With that thought, his eyes cleared, and he embraced the idea that his pain could forge his power. He began reconnecting with mentors and old friends, those who had once believed in him when he had doubted himself. Every conversation, every piece of advice added another brick to the foundation of his redemption. Investments were made in projects that stirred his passion and could change lives, reflecting the man he was determined to become. "I am more than the sum of my losses," he declared during a meeting, his tone resolute and unwavering. As he progressed, Ethan realized that his transformation was not just about rebuilding an empire. It was about redefining himself. He had chosen discipline over vengeance, success over destruction. "I am not the man I once was," he proclaimed with conviction. His anger had cooled. replaced by a steady determination to turn betrayal into a stepping stone toward greatness. Now standing before the mirror, Ethan saw not the broken man of the past, but a man reborn, stronger, wiser, and driven by purpose. His bruised knuckles and tired eyes testified to the battles he had fought. "This pain will not consume me," he vowed, his voice low and firm. "I will rise from these ashes and build a future defined not by betrayal, but by my own strength. Betrayal breaks a man, but what he does next will define him forever." And with that promise echoing in his heart, Ethan stepped forward into a future that, though uncertain, shone with the promise of redemption and hope. Ethan entered a small, quiet cafe. He sat at a corner table, lost in thought and haunted by recent betrayals. At a nearby table, a woman with kind eyes looked up from her book. She did not see the billionaire he once was. She saw only a man weighed down by sorrow. Her gentle voice broke the silence. "You seem troubled," she said softly. "May I ask what burdens you?" Ethan hesitated. He was not accustomed to strangers caring about his inner world. "I carry pain from lost trust and broken promises," he replied, his voice barely above a whisper. "I have been betrayed by those I loved." Her eyes softened with empathy. "Sometimes sharing our pain makes it less heavy. I have learned that even in darkness, a small light can guide us." Ethan listened, feeling an unfamiliar warmth. "I built my empire with ambition, but my heart remained fragile. I trusted too much and saw too little," he admitted. The woman smiled kindly. "True healing begins when we allow ourselves to be vulnerable. Your worth is not defined by your past, but by the courage to rise again." He felt a spark of hope ignite inside him, a reminder that even in the midst of betrayal, there might be a chance for redemption. "I have spent years surrounded by wealth, yet I felt empty," Ethan said, his voice gaining strength. "Your words remind me that there is more to life than the facade I have built." The woman leaned closer. "You are not alone in this journey. Sometimes the most unexpected connections can lead us toward healing. Let this moment be the beginning of a new chapter." Ethan looked into her eyes and saw a reflection of his hidden pain and the promise of change. "I have been blinded by my own success," he confessed. "I allowed the glitter of my fortune to mask the truth of my heart. But your compassion shows me that I do not have to remain lost." Her gentle tone carried a quiet assurance. "You have the strength to rebuild, Ethan. Not by seeking revenge, but by embracing your true self. Let your scars become symbols of survival, not defeat." For the first time in a long while, Ethan felt the heavy weight of his past begin to lift. He realized that his worth was not tied to the title he had carried for so long. He could choose to be more than the sum of his failures. "Thank you," he murmured. "Your words have given me a glimpse of hope." In that quiet cafe, a simple conversation sparked a transformation. Ethan sensed that healing had begun in the most unexpected of places. His pain was still there, but it no longer seemed insurmountable. He resolved to listen to that small, bright voice and to consider that perhaps genuine love could be found in the unlikeliest of moments. As he left the cafe, the memory of her kindness echoed in his mind, a reminder that sometimes the best path forward begins with one sincere connection. Months passed since that chance encounter. Ethan emerged from his solitude like a man reborn. He now walked with purpose and confidence. The burden of betrayal had not vanished, but it had forged a new strength within him. Each morning, he dedicated himself to rigorous workouts, building his body and spirit. "I will not be a victim of my past," he declared to himself with every drop of sweat. At work, his transformation was evident. In boardroom meetings, his voice carried authority and clarity. "We must innovate and lead with integrity," he stated firmly, inspiring his team with a vision of progress and honesty. His decisions were sharp and deliberate, reflecting a mind no longer clouded by regret. The empire he had built now served as a platform for reinvention. Ethan also reconnected with friends and mentors who had once supported him. He attended gatherings where the conversation turned to personal growth and resilience. I have learned that true power lies in our ability to rise after every fall, he explained during one heartfelt discussion. His peers listened intently, their eyes reflecting both admiration and empathy. In his private moments, Ethan would stare into the mirror. He saw not just a man with bruised knuckles and tired eyes, but a survivor, a man who had turned his pain into a stepping stone. I am no longer defined by the betrayal I endured, he whispered, affirming his resolve to reclaim his identity. He recalled the long nights of anger, the isolation in his office, and the desperate search for distraction. Instead of seeking revenge, he had chosen discipline. Revenge would only leave me empty, he said, his voice steady with conviction. True strength comes from building oneself up, not tearing others down. One evening during a quiet dinner with a trusted colleague, Ethan shared his journey. I have been broken, he admitted, his tone raw and honest. I allowed my pain to dictate my actions and I lost myself in the process. But I have learned that every loss carries the seed of renewal. His words resonated with everyone present, offering a beacon of hope to those who had suffered similarly. Ethan began to invest in projects that aligned with his personal mission, initiatives that promised not only profit but also social impact. Success is not merely measured in dollars, but in the positive change we create, he asserted during a company meeting. His renewed vision transformed his leadership style and inspired his employees to strive for something greater than themselves. He started to appreciate that the scars of betrayal were marks of survival rather than symbols of defeat. Each scar is a lesson, each wound a story of resilience, he declared in a moment of quiet reflection. The memories of Isabella and Damien, once sources of unbearable pain, gradually became reminders of his capacity to overcome. Ethan now moved through the world with a calm assurance. The shadows of his past no longer dictated his every thought. I have chosen a path of redemption and growth, he said, his voice imbued with quiet strength. He knew that fate would continue to test him, but he was prepared to face whatever came next. In a final conversation with a longtime mentor, Ethan declared, I refuse to be the victim of my own history. I will transform my pain into purpose, my despair into determination. His mentor nodded, understanding the depth of his resolve. Ethan had become more than a man betrayed. He had become a symbol of transformation. His journey was far from over, yet every step forward affirmed that he was no longer defined by loss. The man who once crumbled under the weight of deception now stood tall, ready to shape a future based on truth and strength. Betrayal breaks a man, but what he does next will define him forever. And in that truth, Ethan found his redemption. Ethan Blake was the guest of honor at a grand gala. A night of power, influence, and unfinished business. The elite murmured his name with admiration, proclaiming, Ethan Blake, back and stronger than ever. Yet beneath the applause and praise, the past loomed like a shadow. Then, a familiar voice broke the steady hum of celebration. Ethan, it has been a while, the voice said, soft yet laden with memories. In that instant, old wounds surged forth, and the ghosts of betrayal stirred within him. His heart pounded as he turned toward the sound, every beat echoing the promise of pain and regret. For a moment, all the accolades faded, replaced by a heavy silence filled with the truth he had long tried to ignore. A hushed murmur rippled through the crowd as Isabella stepped forward, her eyes reflecting a mixture of sorrow and determination. Her smile, practiced and serene, masked the secrets that had torn their love apart. The elegant figure of Damien stood nearby, his posture stiff with unease and guilt that was barely concealed. His presence, once a testament to unwavering loyalty, now carried the weight of betrayal. Isabella spoke softly, Ethan, I have thought of you every day. Her words were gentle, yet each syllable cut deep. Ethan listened, his face unreadable. He felt the bitterness of broken promises and the sting of lies that had been exchanged in whispered conversations and fleeting glances. One voice in the gathering offered a tentative greeting. "Ethan, it is good to see you again," but the sound of it was drowned by the thundering of his own heart. In that moment, the gala transformed from a celebration of success into a battleground of unresolved emotions. The elegant chatter of the elite was now a painful reminder of what had been lost. The memory of Isabella laughing with Damien, the way his hand would linger on her back, and the countless silent warnings now echoed in every corner of Ethan's mind. He could no longer ignore the truth that had been hidden behind smiles and secret looks. Every word he had once believed was now a ghost, haunting him with the reality of betrayal. Ethan did not raise his voice. He did not demand an explanation. Instead, with a heavy heart, he nodded once, an acknowledgement of the pain and the finality of what had transpired. And then he turned and walked away. There was no dramatic confrontation, no loud outburst. His departure was as quiet as it was profound, a silent goodbye that spoke volumes. As he left, the memory of Isabella's gentle apology and Damien's fleeting look of remorse lingered in the air, unresolved questions that would haunt him for years to come. The night of power and influence had become a night of reckoning, a moment when the past resurfaced to challenge his very soul. He knew that the path ahead would be steep and lonely, yet in that silent farewell he discovered a spark of hope. For even as betrayal had broken him, it had also set him on the road to redemption. And as he disappeared into the throng of voices and muted lights, he carried with him a quiet promise that he would rise from this darkness, reborn from the pain and ready to reclaim his true self. Ethan did not look back, leaving behind a world of deceit and shattered dreams. In his heart, a final thought echoed, resonating with both sorrow and newfound resolve. Betrayal breaks a man, but what he does next will define him forever. In the weeks that followed, Ethan sought solace in unexpected places. At a quiet cafe far from the glare of public scrutiny, he encountered a kind stranger, a woman whose gentle words and sincere gaze touched the depths of his wounded spirit. She did not see his wealth or his name. She saw the raw pain and quiet strength within him. "You are more than your scars," she told him, her voice soft but resolute. Her words planted a seed of hope that perhaps healing could begin when least expected. Emboldened by that encounter, Ethan turned his focus inward. He revisited the foundations of his being, the long-forgotten dreams, the passions that had once ignited his soul. He embraced solitude and reflection, understanding that the path to redemption was paved with introspection. He realized that the betrayal, as painful as it was, had freed him from the chains of false security. No longer would he be defined by the lies that had once entangled him. He began to rebuild his life with a new purpose. Every step was measured, every decision a testament to his resilience. In boardroom meetings, his words carried the weight of hard-won wisdom. "I will no longer be a victim of my past," he declared with unwavering determination. His transformation was not instantaneous, but each day brought him closer to the man he aspired to be, a man who had turned betrayal into a lesson, despair into resolve. The journey was not without moments of doubt and regret. There were times when the ghost of Isabella's smile and the memory of Damien's betrayal threatened to pull him back into the darkness. Yet, with each challenge, Ethan grew stronger. He learned that redemption was not found in revenge, but in the courage to let go and move forward. "I have learned that true power lies in our ability to forgive ourselves and rebuild," he admitted during one heartfelt conversation with a trusted mentor. At last, Ethan emerged from the turmoil, a man transformed. His reflection in the mirror no longer revealed the haunted eyes of a betrayed lover, but the determined gaze of someone ready to embrace a future defined by truth and self-respect. His heart, though scarred, beat with the promise of a new beginning. Betrayal breaks a man, but what he does next will define him forever. And in that final, silent vow, Ethan stepped boldly into the future, ready to forge a life built not on the ruins of his past, but on the strength of his own redemption. Ethan did not stop. He did not turn. The voices behind him blurred into nothingness, fading into the background noise of the gala. "Wait, please," Isabella's voice broke through the hum of murmured conversations. Desperate. Shaken. "Just listen to me." But he kept walking. "At least let me explain." Her words carried the weight of a plea of a woman grasping at the last remnants of control. Damien stood beside her, his gaze locked onto the floor. A man who had everything, now reduced to nothing. He did not speak. He did not need to. His silence admitted what his pride never would regret. Ethan did not slow. The crowd watched in breathless anticipation. Some expected rage. A confrontation. A public display of betrayal and vengeance. But all they received was indifference. And that shattered them more than any revenge ever could. Isabella reached out, her fingers hovering just inches from his sleeve. One touch, one moment, and maybe, just maybe, he would stop. But Ethan stepped forward, away from the past that begged for his attention. A final whisper escaped Isabella's lips, barely audible over the heavy silence. "I never meant to hurt you." Still he did not turn. Because the truth was, she no longer had the power to hurt him at all. Ethan emerged into the night, the crisp air filling his lungs. The weight of the past loosened its grip, piece by piece dissolving into the wind. Behind him the gala continued. Laughter. Music. The same world that once defined him. Now nothing more than echoes in the distance. He had no need to look back. For the first time he was untouchable. Not by anger, not by grief, not by the ghosts of what once was. A black car pulled up beside him. The driver stepped out, nodding. "Sir." Ethan exhaled slowly, rolling his shoulders as if shedding a weight that had sat too long upon them. Without hesitation, he stepped into the car, the door closing behind him with quiet finality. Inside, he let his head rest against the seat, his mind clear. No thoughts of Isabella. No thoughts of Damien. Just silence. And in that silence, freedom. He had spent so long believing he needed her. That she was the missing piece to his empire, to his life. But now, as the city lights blurred past the window, an undeniable truth settled deep within him. She was never the missing piece. She was the weight he was always meant to lose. And as the car disappeared into the night, Ethan left behind not just a woman, not just a betrayal, but an entire chapter of himself. Because the greatest revenge was realizing he never needed one. Ethan watched the sunrise from his penthouse balcony. The past no longer controlled him. Every memory of Isabella and Damien had become nothing more than a lesson. He realized that the anger that once consumed him had finally lifted. He whispered softly, "Today marks a new beginning. I am free." In that quiet moment, he understood that the heart does not have to carry old wounds forever. In the days that followed, Ethan focused on building rather than breaking. He returned to his roots, setting his sights on his vision and his empire. Every decision became a calculated step toward a future where emotion no longer blinded him. "Wealth does not define me. Love has not broken me," he declared with quiet conviction. With every meeting, every deal, his mind grew clearer and his resolve stronger. The betrayal that once threatened to shatter him now propelled him forward. "I will become unstoppable," he said, and each word rang true as he transformed pain into power. Then, unexpectedly, he met someone new. A person who did not see the scars of his past but the potential for his future. At a modest gathering in a neighborhood cafe, a kind stranger approached him. "You seem lost," she said, her voice gentle and sincere. Ethan looked up, startled by the compassion in her eyes. He replied, "I have been broken by betrayal, but I am learning to rebuild." Her presence was calming. She did not judge him by his past or his wealth. "Sometimes the right person finds you when you cease to search," she said softly. And for the first time in years, Ethan did not feel the desperate need to chase after love. Instead, he allowed it to come to him naturally, though a quiet question remained. Could he trust again, or would betrayal forever haunt him? Weeks later, a letter arrived from Isabella. Its paper was fine, its ink precise, but Ethan did not feel compelled to read it. "The past belongs to another time," he murmured as he set the letter aside. In that moment, he chose silence over conflict, understanding that closure sometimes comes without words. He walked away from that chapter of his life, leaving behind not only a woman and a friend but an era of sorrow and deception. Finally, Ethan embraced the power of moving forward. He stood stronger, wiser, and untouchable. His business flourished as his soul found a rare peace. "I have lost much, but I have gained even more," he said with a steady voice that resonated with newfound confidence. He learned that not every loss is a tragedy. Some losses free you to become who you are truly meant to be. Every scar became a symbol of survival, and every setback a stepping stone toward redemption. With each passing day, his life grew richer in meaning. "I am truly free now," he declared, his words filled with hope and determination. He had transformed his pain into purpose, his betrayal into a catalyst for growth. His journey from heartbreak to healing had forged a new path, a future defined not by the ghosts of his past, but by the strength of his own redemption. And as he stepped forward into that bright, uncertain future, he carried one final thought deep within his heart. Sometimes, betrayal is not the end. It is the beginning of a story you never knew you needed. Ethan lost what he thought was everything, but in the end, he gained more than he ever imagined. Have you ever faced betrayal that led to something better? Share your story in the comments below. Sometimes losing someone is exactly what you need to find yourself.